Hello, Bishop Malcolm.
Hello, John. How are you?
Very well, yourself?
Good. Yeah, top form.
Brilliant. Just wanted to, this week we're going to be looking at the Holy Spirit. So the first question is, what does it mean to say, I believe in the Holy Spirit?
When we talk about the Holy Spirit, we're talking about God's presence in the world and in our lives in a very real, if somewhat disorganised way. I think there are two aspects to the gift of the Holy Spirit. One is the gift of the Holy Spirit in the world, and this is referred to in chapter 3 of St John's Gospel when Nicodemus goes to meet Jesus by night, and Jesus talks about the Spirit, saying we don't know where it comes from or where it goes to, the way in which, and it gives me the image anyway of it kind of whirling around the world and just there for everybody. Then there's the gift of the Holy Spirit, which was left by Jesus himself when he said, I'll send you another advocate, another person to speak for us, another person to be by our side. And that's a specific gift of the Holy Spirit to the Church.
What does the Holy Spirit do within the life of the Church? You just briefly mentioned it there.
It animates the Church. It shows us that the promises of Jesus, that he will be with us to the end of the age, are real. It makes real that promise that when 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I will be there in the midst of you. It's the Spirit of Jesus that gives us the power and the insight to be God's hands and feet and heart in this world.
Some churches describe themselves as charismatic or spirit-led. What is meant by this?
All churches are charismatic, of course, because they all have the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and the word charisma is a Greek word meaning gifts. We apply that term especially to those churches which would exhibit some of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, which are mentioned in the New Testament, such as speaking in tongues, praying in tongues, which means praying in strange languages, which are expressions of the Holy Spirit in the life of that particular church. It may also mean that that church is more committed to a particular form of worship, which involves direct invocation of the Holy Spirit, rather than, say, in the Catholic Church, using our sacramental life to draw us close to God.
The Catechism lists different symbols of the Holy Spirit. For example, fire, wind, water, oil, and a dove. Which do you find the most powerful, and why?
I like them all, of course, but the wind for me is the one that expresses the freedom of the Spirit, the way in which the Spirit isn't bound by our conventions. You can't contain that idea of God as wind in a box or a cage. The other ideas, the other images of the Holy Spirit all express ideas which give us an insight into the way in which the Spirit works in our lives. We use the dove because it's very hard to draw a wind. So if you can draw a bird flying and floating in the wind, then that looks good too. And also doves have great biblical symbolism in terms of peace. And that is one of the great gifts of the Holy Spirit, bringing peace to our communities. Oil is good too, because it expresses the way in which the Spirit strengthens us and heals us. And oil as ointment and as an invocation, oil as something which we use to perfume and to soften and to heal our wounds is very common throughout the life of humanity, let alone the life of the Church. So all of those symbols, with the symbol of water, which expresses for us not just cleansing, but also a great source of life and power within us, but with that hint of danger as well, is also, which we know how dangerous water can be too. All of that really does kind of sum up the way we use symbols to express this very powerful expression in our life of God's presence.
St. Paul calls us temple of the Holy Spirit. What is meant by that phrase?
What St. Paul is referring to here is the temple of the Jews, in which right at the centre of the temple was the Holy of Holies, where the tablets of the law, that is to say the stones in which the Ten Commandments were written, which were brought down by Moses from Mount Sinai. Those stones were kept in the Holy of Holies, in the Ark of the Covenant, and once a year the high priest would come in and sprinkle blood on them for his sins and for the sins of the people, but only once a year. In our lives we become temples like that, because deep within our heart is the Holy Spirit, a place of holiness, a place where we keep the gift of God, of God's life, and it stays within us. What we don't do, of course, is to recognise that. If we really believe that, and took it to its logical conclusion, we would treat ourselves much better and treat each other better. We would look after our bodies and would respect other people, because we really are temples of the Holy Spirit. Deep within us is that Holy of Holies, where God resides.
Pentecost is the birthday of the Church. We hear of the great zeal of the apostles. Now that the Church has grown older, do you think that zeal is still present, or has some of it been lost?
Well, it can be present. It's up to the individuals, because as I said, the gift of the Holy Spirit to each of us is nothing less really than the gift of God's life. It comes to us in baptism and confirmation. It's not something distinct from God. It's not some stuff that He somehow pipes into our bodies or our souls. It's actually God's life, which He's most generously sharing with us. So you can't get better than that. If we use the symbolism of fire, of course, we can let that life just die down, so it's a barely glowing ember. It will never go out, but that we can just leave it like that. Or we can fan it into a flame, to use another expression of St. Paul, and then we will be on fire, and we can set the church on fire and the world on fire too, with God's love. So it's all there for us. We've just got to make it happen. And if I can refer back to the question about the charismatic-led churches, Spirit-led churches, then that's how they would see their role in the world, as very, very visibly and powerfully, very standing up for the Christian values, for being very upfront Christians, alive and on fire with the Holy Spirit.
The Year of Faith is dedicated to Mary. How did the Holy Spirit work with and through Mary, and what can we learn from that?
I think the two key points in the biblical account of Mary are when she is overshadowed by the Holy Spirit and is conceived with a child, and that is Jesus. And then through the Holy Spirit then will remain with her throughout her life. And particularly we notice at Pentecost the disciples are gathered in the upper room, and the Holy Spirit comes to them all again to give them that fire we've been talking about. That's the symbol which is seen by the others. It says the Holy Spirit descended like a fire on them. So we are people who are on fire with the Holy Spirit. So if we take the first instance, we too can hold Jesus deep within our hearts, deep within our bodies, our souls. There is a Jesus-shaped space within each of us. If we can see virginity, for example, not just as the ability to conceive, but the power to bear Jesus within us, then you can see how Mary's virginity is such an important aspect of her being endowed with this great gift by the Holy Spirit. We too can model ourselves on that. We too can receive the Spirit within us. We too can hold Jesus in our hearts. Likewise, just as at Pentecost, we too can refresh ourselves by receiving that gift over and over again, and being set on fire by the Holy Spirit. So Mary gives us that model from the moment of Jesus' conception through to the beginning of the church at Pentecost.
Thank you very much, Bishop Malcolm.
You're welcome.